Hi, everybody. Thanks, Pete, and thanks everybody for the presentations today. They've been fantastic. Um, my name's Simon Glenister. I am the founder of Noise Solution, pronouns he, him. I'm going to talk today about how we've developed a digital platform within our practical work, working with young people, that for us solves a whole lot of problems and has positive impact on the outcomes that we achieve, but also has a side benefit of documenting, analysing and evaluating the programme as well at the same time. So following on from a lot of those other talks earlier, we've actually developed a way of hopefully being able to push back against funders and say, no, we're doing the evaluation ourselves and we're doing it very well, thank you, and challenging them. But also, it's also solving a whole heap of problems for us as an organisation. The reason we've gone down this road in the first place is that when Noise Solutions started, it was, and still is, a social enterprise driven by gaining contracts and income rather than being grant funded. So we weren't pulled around by lots of different organisations as well. So that was quite significant in where this perspective has arisen from. And as Pete said, I've also got a research hat on as well, and that's driven a lot of the methodology behind the digital platform that I'm going to talk about. So essentially, Noise Solution mentors young people in all sorts of different challenging circumstances. My background is as a youth worker, essentially. I worked in youth offending and various other local authority organisations, working with young people in all sorts of challenging circumstances. Essentially, what we do is we pair that young person, and the referrals come from mental health teams and from schools, from local authorities, social work teams, and they're often young people with quite significant challenges around engagement. Those professional teams are struggling to get anywhere near them. Often, and what we do is we pair them with a musician and we mentor them for 20 hours on whatever music they want to make. So if they want to make hip hop or grime or drill or drum and bass, the title was a bit of a misnomer, if I'm honest. We don't just do drill. We do quite a lot of it, but it's not the only thing we do. We ask the young person whatever genre they want to make. So we make a really wide spectrum of stuff. And that's quite important for me as well. We don't define ourselves as a hip hop or urban music organisation. I don't like that term at all, got to be honest. Anyway, so what differentiates us, I think quite significantly from a lot of organisations, is the fact that we've formalised, again, one of the processes that one of the earlier presenters was talking about, you know, their sort of log of what's happened. We actually have created a digital platform that allows the young person and the musician to capture their thoughts and feelings about their session within the session as part of the process. This isn't a separate evaluation, which is another thing you've heard earlier that is quite significant. The young person and the musician capture the music they make. They capture video reflections at the end of every session about what's working for them and what's not working for them. And that platform, or that feed rather, is projected onto the screens at the end of every session safely to parents, carers, social workers, care coordinators, whoever are the significant adults in that young person's life. Okay, so essentially they are creating a document as part of the practice within every session where they are reflecting on the experience as well, and creating stuff and sharing it that they're proud of as well, talking about the whole thing. I'm going to play you a very, very short 4-minute film that will allow you to visualize that. And then I'll also start to talk about what the benefits are of collecting all of this data in one place. I should clarify, this collecting of stories, this digital feed stuff, is only one very, very small part of what our digital platform does. It also does a whole bunch of stuff, and that will start to become clear as you see this short 4-minute film.
Our civic role is to improve the well-being of young people on the margins of society. To do this, we've developed a new form of digital youth work. We use music tech to engage youth, enhancing that mentoring process with cloud-based technologies to capture and share it with families and key workers who both witness and contribute to those feeds. Our learning takeaway is how massively digital interventions benefit by having an evidenced theory of change at their core. Following our founders' 2-year research masters, it is self-determination theory that informs all aspects of our work. Our fusion of academia and digital expertise meant that uniquely in March 2020, within 3 days of lockdown, we were able to shift to entirely digital delivery of one-to-one online mentoring to vulnerable youth while maintaining interactive online sessions that created relationships, complete oversight of every session online, full safeguarding capability with a collection and automated analysis of wellbeing data outcomes. We're shifting young people from ill-being to well-being by creating digital communities around each young person that contain those adults most significant to them. Here they see themselves succeeding and see others seeing them, validating their new successes. Every set of sessions is genuinely participant-led, and they're rich video reflections of what worked and what didn't work each week evaluated. Weekly, the participants' experience is projected onto the screens of families and key workers. It's a weekly process of evaluation and development led by the young person. Each person's feed connects the musician, the participant, the family, carers, and key workers, all interconnected around a growing narrative of success rather than problems, changing perceptions and conversations. Even during lockdown, we could still use creativity to build relationships against a backdrop of enforced isolation. Within the platform, participants contribute validated wellbeing scale data, which is then analysed using academic methodologies automatically. Of the last 230 vulnerable young people that completed, 47.78% reported low levels of wellbeing pre-intervention. Post-intervention, that dropped to 26%, practically halving, whilst more than quadrupling high levels of wellbeing from 3 to 14%. 4 years of analysis of face-to-face work demonstrates positive wellbeing outcomes are a statistical probability. Our online delivery over lockdown is returning the same level of statistical significance. On average, yearly, 61% finish at, above, or within a meaningful 2 points of the national wellbeing score, and that's benchmarked against a sample of 30,000 responses to the same scale. An independent 8-month study put the value of those wellbeing changes as savings to families and services in the east of England of over £1 million a year, every year. We have a cloud-based platform capturing and analysing equal amounts of story and number data. We're taking the woolly out of arts impact, solving many of the problems faced by arts organisations in reporting, and by sharing those stories in a way that improves outcomes. The future. Every piece of evaluation you've ever seen happened passively after the fact. We can now do it live. We've proven already we can convert participant video reflections to text, use machine learning to analyse them for negative, neutral or positive sentiments. We can also combine that data with linguistic analysis that picks out bits of the speech we know have concepts vital to flourishing well-being. It's an evolving, cloud-based, automated analysis of text and video data, which is exponentially richer than feedback forms, and it's detailing how an organisation is impacting on well-being as participants progress through a programme as a value proposition to the third sector. That is massive.
Okay, so there's an awful lot to unpack in that video, and we've raced ahead a bit. So now I'm going to wind it back a bit and say, why are we doing all this stuff? What was the point of all of that? And the point for us as an organisation is that we don't actually view ourselves as a music organisation at all, ironically. We view ourselves as a wellbeing organisation. That's the thing we are focused on doing. And the reason we're interested and focused on that is that the evidence is pretty unequivocal. If you genuinely impact on wellbeing, you get better engagement outcomes, education outcomes, health outcomes, social outcomes, all the things that social work teams, mental health teams, local authority teams, schools are trying to do, are more likely to have positive outcomes if you improve how a young person feels about themselves. So, as I said, I've done a research master's with Pam as my supervisor. Thanks, Pam. And one of the most useful things that came out of that piece of work was coming across a lens with which to look at the work that we do, called self-determination theory, built on a 30-year culture of empirical evidence. And essentially what it's saying is, wherever we're working with young people, whatever we're doing, or adults as well, we need to create spaces where people experience a sense of autonomy, volitional choice over what they're doing. People need to experience a sense of competence, like they're not being made to feel incompetent, and they need to feel a sense of connectedness, relatedness to other people. Participatory arts, music projects are the perfect sort of fallow ground within which to create these sorts of conditions. as well. What I was seeing in my background as a youth worker, that whenever behaviours were being flagged as problematic or of concern, professionals were coming into young people's lives, and the subtext of all those conversations was, "You're rubbish at that, you're not doing that properly, I'm the expert, listen to me, we'll fix you and everything will be okay." And what's occurring there so often, not intentionally, but actually as a subtext, is the fact that we're removing any sense of autonomy from those young people and making them feel incompetent, which is, I think, quite problematic. So we're intentionally trying to not do that. This is a non-problematized, non-medicalized intervention, where as far as the young person is concerned, they are just making music, whatever else is going on in their background. So in terms of how we apply SDT, or self-determination theory, within our work, the relationship with the musician is key. Again, all the literatures across clinical mental health and education tell us that the number one indicator of success is the relationship you have with the person you're working with. So our musicians are autonomy supportive in their work. Again, which also allows them to be culturally responsive to whatever the issue, the musical tastes of that young person are. We will work with whatever their interests are. The competence element for us comes from using, music technology, essentially, of sidestepping a lot of the barriers that people normally have around learning music. They've just got to be able to drag and drop stuff. We do a lot of simple loop production, really, really effective. And then the relatedness element for us comes from the creation of these digital stories that allow the young person to capture their competence and externalize it for them, take it outside of their head. There I am being good at something. The rest of the world is telling me I'm rubbish at everything. Here I am being good at something. And because it projects onto the screens of family and key workers, whoever they've autonomously decided are the most significant adults in their life, it projects onto those screens as a social media feed. It just looks like an everyday social media feed. It literally has like buttons and comment boxes and whatever. So they comment as well. And so the young person is not only seeing themselves being good at something, but they're also receiving these validating messages from the significant adults in their lives, allowing them to internalize more easily those feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So that's the theory. SDT says if we focus on autonomy, competence, relatedness, we get improved well-being outcomes. If we get better well-being outcomes, we get better outcomes generally, societally. So we need to kind of measure that. So as I said, we're a well-being organization, so we measure well-being. And those well-being metrics are using the shortened Warwick and Edinburgh scale, which is validated from the NHS. And the young person does one at the beginning of a set of sessions and at the end of a set of sessions. There is no perfect way to measure well-being. Before anybody wants to start having that conversation, we know this. It's a subjective reflection, but we're trying to get a steer as an organization over the population about what the impact is that we're having on well-being, and that data is fed automatically into the platform where we can have an overview. This is live data that I see when, or when anybody in the organization sees when they log in, showing us what the impact is on well-being, and we can granularly cut and dice that by age, gender, however we want to. Essentially, we conduct a whole bunch of other statistical analysis as well. So one of the metrics we use is, whether the returns are statistically significant. What's the probability that we're going to see a change in well-being? And for the last 5 years now, it's been p.0001. So massive levels of statistical significance of impact on well-being with prolific offenders, non-attenders, school phobics, kids dealing with anxiety, depression, histories of non-engagement with other organisations. That's what we're seeing. So that's quantitative data. You saw in the video very, very briefly that we were alluding to other ways of measuring qualitative data as well. Historically, there's been this massive issue around only ever doing, a few short case studies. This is historically what third sector organisations do, and that's because of the resource intense nature of collecting studies, and they're always done after the fact. Whereas what we're doing is allowing the young person to have their voice front and center as they create their own case study with the co-production of their family and their key workers week on week. They are at the center of it, talking about their experiences, reflecting on what's working and what's not working with the musician. So this is an enormously rich data source. We've had 900 young people go through this process. We've got that many of these feeds with all this rich video data, at least 10 reflection videos within every one of them about their process as they go through it. So what we've been working on recently is the ability to extract the audio from that data, convert it to text automatically, sentiment analyze it for whether something's positive or neutral or negative, which we can do. We can do all of that. And what we're building now at the moment, and we're just starting to collect data on this, is to also linguistically analyze it, neurolinguistic processing. So looking for elements of autonomy, competence, and relatedness as well, that we can then compare with the sentiment data, whether they're talking about something positively or neutrally or negatively as well. Benchmark against the nationally benchmarkable wellbeing metrics, and then what you're actually shifting towards is live wellbeing analysis as somebody progresses through a program where we can react when we are not seeing elements of autonomy, competence, relatedness, so that we can improve outcomes.